But this was my lesson for Book of Days. I think Effie has still got Book of Days on at 50% off at the moment if you use the Birds of a Feather coupon code when you buy it. And it's got lots of lovely lessons in it. My lesson's really quite a big one because as well as this you get kind of a technique-y lesson, which is more feathers. But this is where the idea for these gratitude feathers came from, was doing this lesson. And then when we kind of all did it in the class, Effie made some little ones that she put black outlines on. And then we were talking about bunting. And then I made gratitude feathers from them. So that's kind of what we're going to do today, which are these little guys that are hiding under here. Oh, I've had lots of lovely feedback from the lesson, Nancy. I've been quite chuffed. I still see them popping up now, which is really quite awesome. You get to hide wishes in there, and there's lots of glazing and pattern making, all kinds of lovely stuff, and splattering, because splattering's great fun. So these little guys are gratitude feathers, and they just look like pretty painted feathers, but underneath each of them, you probably can't see because I tend to do it in white Posca pen, I've written my gratitudes onto them. Some of them have painted backs, some of them have kind of sparkly iridescent media painted on the back of them. Some of them are just gold, and I tend to use like acrylic to do that because it's quicker at covering and I use a lot less of it. Here's another one. This one has got a totally different pattern on the back, and this one has got, this is kind of it's an interference metallic paint, I think, so it does this lovely colour change that I really like. And they've all got different kinds of patterns on them. One of the things they've all got in common is they do have some kind of a kind of black line generally along the edge, and I prefer to do that with a soft B pencil. So hello Dale. So I thought that is what we would make. So the first thing I'm thinking of starting out with today, oh I missed that one, just sat there on his own, bless him. He's one that I think I've used salt on, which we're not going to do today, but you could do. If you're watching this on replay, you absolutely could use salt. You just have to leave it for 6 or 7 hours. So I'm going to think about a gratitude or gratitudes, and I'm going to show you 2 ways to do it. One way is that it's just for one gratitude. Thanks, Nancy. And the other is if you've got lots of things you want to put down as a gratitude. I am going to put a little proviso on here and say, if life is particularly tough at the moment and you are finding it hard to be grateful, I totally get that. There can be periods and times where you feel like you should be grateful for all kinds of things, but actually you can't quite honestly, hand on heart, say that you are. That is totally okay. You can do a couple of things. One is you can be grateful that you are letting yourself feel your feelings and not making yourself come up with a gratitude, so that you're able to do that. The other is you can choose to pick something you would like to be grateful for and put that on the feather as kind of I'm going to say I'm grateful for this thing as if it's already happened for me. Or your third option is you can just paint a pretty feather along with us. So the first thing you need to do, I use £140 or 300 GSM watercolour paper, and these are scrap strips from where I've cut down and made journals. So I've grabbed those out of my drawer, and we're going to just draw a feather on it. So my way of doing that is I draw that line here, and then I draw the kind of central stem and pull it down so it gets narrower towards the tip, like that. And that's kind of that middle bit, the bit that I tend to paint gold on these. Then you can decide what kind of feather shape you want to do. So one of my that I'm quite liking at the moment. Comes out, kind of gets shoulders there, and then comes down, and he's quite a fat end to it, like that. If I felt like I wanted to alter this, then I could do, and I could rub it out. And once I've got that basic feather shape, hello Teresa, hello Carmelita, hello Erica. Oh, that's reminded me, I need to switch my glasses over. If I don't put my other glasses on, my detail work will be a bit useless. I don't know why that reminded me. I think it was because I could still read the screen really well. So you get your basic feather shape, and then the next thing I do is I put in a line. I'll put in 3 actually, and these are the bits that I'm going to cut out. So once I've put the line in, I'll try and make sure they stay parallel. If you see this one and this one aren't parallel, they would eventually meet, and I want them so they would never meet. So I'm just going to alter this one. I'm using darker pencil than I probably would normally, to try and help it to show up for you guys. And then I just turn those into little triangles, and in the end I'm going to actually cut those out. I like to do a few. Hi Sarah, hi Izzy. So I'm going to do another couple on here, and maybe you'd like to either draw one of your own, or draw a couple of your own. I've got a couple that are drawn on there, and they're kind of pointier shapes, so I might try, I think, making it curve this time, just like that. So just getting those to come together, so it's a straight line and then 2 bits that come together. And then I think I am going to make sure I leave enough here that I can tie some thread onto it, and pull that down like that. Now I'm going to have to, I don't want to hit this one, so I'm having to play around a little bit with where the end goes. So I'm going to do that, and I obviously need to alter this a little bit just to make it come around that corner and match the shape. I'm going to do that, and then I use it's a Tombow mono eraser, so it's got just a little bit, so I can just go in and erase the little bits that I need to, just to tidy up a little bit, but they're quite forgiving. So that's 2, and I've got 2 on here. Maybe draw 1 more. Oh no, I've got 2 more on there too. I don't mind having lots of feathers. I'm feeling my paper. Some of this is hot press, which is smooth, and some of it is cold press, which is a bit rougher, and I'm really liking cold press at the moment, so I think I'm going to do one of those. And I think I'll go for that. Oh no, I don't like that. That's better. I'll just tidy that up a little bit. It's odd how some ways you can curve and they work. Hi Deb. I probably do have a Pinterest board for feathers. Yes, Nancy, that is a very good idea. Hang on and I will see if I can. I'm not really a multitasker. I'm liking curvy feathers. This one's very long for my tree. I'm going to have to shorten that because my tree's only little. And if I do one this big, it's just going to not fit. So just going to take those bits off like that. So I'm hoping that if you're painting along, you will have a few feathers that you can choose from now. So with these ones where I've just drawn the feather outline, if I wanted to use one of those, I would go back in and I'd put in those 3 lines. They're kind of saying the direction the little, I don't know what they're called. They're like little mini feathers on the feather would go if you looked. And I'm just putting those in so they would be a triangle that we could cut out. I'm actually going to work on this one just because I've already cut it, I think. So the reason I've got 2 is I want to show you 2 ways to tackle your gratitude bit Now, for me, I quite like doing these at the end of a week or even at the end of the month to add on to my tree. And when I do that, I have quite a few things that I want to add in there to say that I am grateful for. And so I grab a Posca pen and giving it a good shake. Hey Kay, well done. And I'm just going to check over here that it's working yet. And so I would get my feather and I would write along I am grateful for and whatever I'm grateful for. So I am grateful that the live is going well and people actually came. I am grateful for company while I art and create. I am grateful for the sun and a clean garage. I could keep going until I filled that feather. But as you can see, you can't really see that writing. And as long as it dries, you don't even see it when you paint over it, but your gratitudes are hidden underneath. The other way is you pick just one thing. And I am going to put it on still in white Posca pen. And I'm going to go with, I am grateful for sunny days. And normally, I'm I like the rain girl. So, but at the moment I am really grateful for these sunny days. With this one, where I'm just grateful for one thing, it's easy to pick out my colours because I'll pick out colours and ideas and patterns that link to whatever I think of when I think sunny days. With this one, I could pick a thing or I could just go with any colour scheme that I liked that appealed to me and just follow my intuition. So I've got my mixing palette. These are old kind of plasticky ones, but the really cool thing about them is that I can have 5 or 6 stacked up and I can use up all that paint and I don't waste any, which I love. Hi Gwen. And so I'm going to work on it first just on here. I'm going to move these ones out of the way because sometimes I'm a bit of a splatterer. And for me, if I'm thinking sunny, then I'm kind of thinking yellows and oranges, and I've got a couple of favourite yellows. One of them is transparent yellow, which I love. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that and just pop it with a little bit of water here. And I'm going to use wet in wet. I do wet in wet 2 ways, so I'll try and show you both. With these, because we're going to cut them out, we don't have to worry too much about edges. So, and because I'm using yellow, which is quite a pale colour, I don't have to worry too much about the middle. I am kind of missing it. So I'm putting on just plain water in the feather shape, not worrying about the triangles that we're going to cut out. So it's wet. And this is the first way I learned to do wet in wet. And it's not always the way I do it now, but it is a good way. Get some of that transparent yellow, and because the paper is already wet, you can see that the paint is kind of moving and being sucked around by the water. If you find a bit isn't wet enough, then you can add some more water. You want it to be wet but not drippy. You don't want to tilt your page and see water running around. So just go back in, and you can use intense amounts of colour or you can use watery bits of colour. Now this is all just transparent yellow at the moment. So I'm going to grab another yellow. It's going to be a warm yellow. It'll be something like a Hansa yellow medium or something like that. I'm just looking to see if I've got names on these. I don't. I've got pigment numbers. This one will probably have a name. Yeah, that's Hansa yellow medium. So something like that. It's kind of warmer than a lemony yellow. I'm going to just pop some bits of that in. And that was neat. I'm using a number 5 spotter, which is probably a little bit big. And then I'm going to grab a gold. This is, it's a coolish gold. I think it's called Moonlight by Fine Tech. I'm so bad at washing my brush today. Here we go. So you should really do this bit with an older brush so you're not wrecking your brushes. This is why I don't have super expensive brushes, because I am not great at remembering to do that. So we're going to just pop some of these bits of gold. And at this point it's just playing. This doesn't, you know, doesn't have to be symmetrical or follow a pattern or anything like that. It's just getting some colour onto our feather. Any of the colours that you feel kind of linked to your gratitude or you're drawn to. I tend to stick with a colour palette that will not make a brown. So I could put yellows and reds together, or yellows, reds and oranges, or I could put yellows and blues together, or yellows, blues and greens, or I could put reds and blues and purples, or stick with kind of natural tones. I don't tend to mix all three primaries when I'm doing this, just for ease. I've just got plain water on my brush now. Well, I would have had plain water on my brush, but I've managed to pick up some green somehow, but that's okay. And I'm just dropping in some plain water, just to see if it'll make any patterns or interestingness for me. Sometimes it does, it depends. And I don't work often with my yellows, so these aren't colours that I know brilliantly well. And then I'm going to pick up, I think this is quinacridone gold or something like that. So you can see it's a lovely kind of warm orange colour. It's much darker. I'm just going to try and pop some dots of that in for them to spread around while it's still wet. And this is just to add some little interesting splashes of colour and just some more patterning to it, just because I fancied it, if I'm honest. I just thought, oh, I like quinacridone gold, I'm going to pop a bit of that on, make sure I've got to that bit there. So we need to leave that to dry. I'm going to do something a bit different on this one and go for something in kind of blues, I think, because alongside the fact that it was sunny, there were beautiful blue skies out there, which I really liked. So I'm just grabbing, these are kind of ultramarine blues, and not that one, maybe this one. Yeah, this one is kind of more of it's a phthalo blue, I think. I'm not sure whether it's red or green shade. The other way that I do wet in wet is that I actually paint a colour on, then I take the paint off my brush, I take some of the water off my brush and just use what's left of the water on my brush to move it around. So there's some colour on there, and then go back into where I've put that colour on. And I'm just using a couple of blues just to make it a bit more interesting, really. This one didn't have as clear an edge, so. And it is just literally a case of popping that up. And yeah, Nancy is quite right. That is, I put them, I have like, you see them at Christmas, but it looks like a silver birch type tree, that kind of a tree. And then it has little fairy lights coming out of its branches. And I dangle them on there, and I can see it from my art desk, so I see it quite a lot. My art desk lives in the living room, so it's a bit of a thoroughfare for everyone, and getting quiet is, it's quite a challenge, especially at the moment. And so again with that, we could try dropping in water. Now you can see with the blues, you can kind of start to see those pretty patterns that are going to start to appear. And I really quite like those. But also, I've got this really cool blue kind of metallic that might be fun to pop in. This one's another Fine Tech one, it's called Deep Space. I'm wondering what that will do. So I've loaded up with colour and water. I was touching. And what these tend to do is, although the pattern itself can kind of disappear and you don't necessarily keep seeing it, you get these lovely little shimmery sparkles. I'm also going to pop in a little bit of this gold. So again, just loading up. I'm just going to pop it on because I love the kind of sparkle of gold against blue. Oops, bouncing around a little bit. And you can see this is just plain, and this for me is incredibly mindful. Now, if I were doing this and I weren't talking to you guys, I'd have probably done a little bit of a breathing exercise at the start. In fact, I did a breathing exercise before I turned the technology on because I was feeling a bit nervous. Just something basic. I've got a free little short video on my YouTube channel that talks you through one of the ways I begin. And I think in the group, in the files section, there's a PDF on talking about mindful watercolours and what it means to me, where I talk about how I begin as well. So this one you can see is a little bit wetter than this one. I need to dry them with a heat gun. If you are doing this in the replay, you can just pause and let it dry naturally if you want to. If this is very noisy, I apologise. Oh, thank you guys. Okay, that's fair. Yeah. You can tell when watercolours are dry, properly dry. If you feel the paper after the heat of the heat gun's gone, if it feels even a tiny bit cool, the paper is still wet inside, even though no paint's coming off on your fingers. So you give it another dry, because otherwise the paper kind of will peel much more easily and your colours will lift. So we've got our basic things. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put these centre parts in. It can be a little bit fiddly, and I will say I'm going to do mine in paint, but you could quite easily do this step in Posca pen, and that would work just as well. You could use something like a Signo Uniball gold pen, that would work beautifully. You could probably even use Tombows or Ecoline brush pens. So if you're kind of thinking, I'm not sure I want to do that with a brush, then absolutely do it with a pen or a pencil, something that will dry and that you can put more paint details on, but we're not really going to put any more water on, so it doesn't matter if it would kind of move if water went on top of it. I hope that makes sense. Oh, Dale, you have one of those trees. Awesome. Deb, fantastic. Well, this is perfect then. You'd be able to make little baby ones now. So I'm going to grab myself a finer brush. That one looks nice. I want to show you this brush. My mum got me this brush for my birthday, and I'm pretty sure you can see that it is like, it's the tiniest amount of bristles. This is a 000 spotter next to it. This is a 20. It's awesome, but honestly, I'm scared I'm going to hurt the poor thing. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a gold kind of stem down this one, and I'm going to do blue, I think, down this one. I might do orange, but I think probably blue. My brain is wanting blue. So I'm going to pick myself up a little bit more of that kind of phthalo blue that I really love. I think there was a colour called Helios blue. I can't remember if it was Sennelier or someone else that I absolutely adored that was very similar to this. Right, so I've grabbed some of that. And now I tend to start at this end, and I go on one side and pull down and try and create kind of a smooth line. If it bleeds a little bit or it's not perfect, it's okay, because we're going to go in with a pencil afterwards and add some shading there, so it's really very, very forgiving. And so we need to be gentle with ourselves. One of the key things of mindful watercolours, as well as the idea of being present, and I am working really hard to be present with you guys and doing this art now, and just be thinking about the paint and what I'm doing and not anything else. No worries about things that happened earlier or things that might happen or any of those things, is to actually let go of kind of judging. And it sounds really easy, but you can often with art you can end up being quite critical, and there's a difference between being discerning, where you're kind of going, yeah, I like that, no, I didn't like how that worked out, and where you're being kind of you're judging, where you're saying it's wrapped up in I'm good at that or I'm bad at that, and so when you don't like something, I'm really useless at art. That's what I try to not do. Sometimes, you know, you do, and that's okay. I think mindfulness is a bit like a muscle. You know, you have to work on it and build it, and every time you catch yourself not, you know, judging or not being present, and you pull yourself back to being present or to being discerning and not judging yourself and using a kind internal voice, you are working that muscle and making it stronger, and that's a good thing. Right, so there's the blue popped on. It's quite a strong blue, which I like. And then on this side I'm going to go for gold. I think I'm going to... Where am I going to go for gold, or shall I go for blue? I don't know. Decisions. Hi, Bex. Or Rebecca. I'm never sure which to call you. It's the oddest thing. I call you both in my head. Oh, I've got a dirty brush again. I really am being terrible. My poor paints, they're going to be sad with me. Don't worry, I'll clean you. Yeah. Right. Don't try and activate a metallic paint with a little brush. Use a big brush. Don't be like Rach, who forgets when she's painting. Alright, there we go. See if we can get that going a little bit. Finetech paints, they're awesome. I really like them as metallics. I also like that when I emailed them and asked them, you know, where their mica came from and if it was ethically sourced, they not only replied to me, they replied to me with a very detailed answer to reassure me that yes, it was, and told me all about the stuff. And they, you know, I really liked that. They do get these holes appear in them, but it's just because you tend to work your brush around in one place. I've got one that I was gifted. I was gifted these well over a year ago, and I used them quite a bit, and you can see they're still really going strong. So they're awesome. Let's see if we can get this centre bit down. Now the only thing with metallic paints is if you want it to be totally solid, you kind of have to get the paint on so that it's wet, like that. And then you have to drip more paint in so it goes really thick and solid. You could grab out your fluid acrylic, and I think it's bright gold or bright iridescent gold in golden fluid acrylics. That is really lovely for this. So I'm just going to persevere with my watercolours for now, but I might need a slightly bigger brush for this feather because it's a little bit fatter. There we go, that one might be better. This is, I'm working in my spotters just because that's what I've got in my pot next to me. This is a number 3 spotter, but whatever brush you're comfy with and you can do it with is just right. You know, I kind of think that it's good to know how different brushes work and the rules of when you can and can't use them, but then it's also good not to pay any attention to them and just go with what works for you, because that's way more important than whether it's the right brush. If it works for you, then it is the right brush. It was Nancy who got me into Finetech paints. Got a lot to answer for, Nancy. A terrible amount to answer for. And the fact that my poor mum left her Finetech paints here with me before lockdown, and now it's just gone, oh, just use them, Rach. Just use them, and if there's any left, I'll borrow them back when I need them. Or obviously replace them. But it is quite nice because she'd bought a load of awesome colours that I would never have chosen. And it was great. Right, so we've got a fairly decent amount of gold in there. And I'll pop back to this yellow one. And we had that quinacridone, or no, quinacridone burnt? Oh, hang on. Quinacridone gold, that was it. It wasn't burnt. I've got a few paints. I get the names confused. Just getting a little bit of that, a little bit of water. I'm just going to go into this one. I'm going to add some little circles, kind of on top of where these darker bits are. But I want it to be quite an intense line. I don't want it to be watery. And I'm going to do them different sizes and just dot them around. There's not a pattern, there's not an arrangement. I get my brushes from Jackson's, which is in the UK. I did have a hunt around to try and see if I could find somewhere in America, and I found places that would ship to there. This was pre all the craziness, but it's harder. That I didn't find a brush that was called the same as the spotter, but I actually quite like using rounds, and my favourite small brushes are Pro Art brushes that I have, and they're about, I think, £16 for a set of 6 or 8, and they're mostly white ones, these. I think, is that the right one? Yeah, that's a 3.0, and they go all the way up to 10.0, which is really, that's normally as fine as I ever need to get. Oh, dirty fingers. I'm kind of liking this. I think I'm actually going to fill them in. Yeah, I like them filled in, so I'm going to fill those in. There we go. So check that one there. We've got a little one here. And so I've just basically popped some random spots. I like spots. You might, you know, have a totally different pattern that you like, and I do love to get my inspiration from actual feathers. Yeah, Jolene, I find longer bristles hard. I've never made friends with a rigger brush, which is, I've only got a number 4 rigger. It's much too big for the size I'm working at for me, and it does this kind of long, kind of pointy line. I think they're very similar to liners, or the same as liners, and I'm trying to make friends with them. Right, so yeah, I think I'm going to leave the paint in there, just partly because of time and partly because I really quite like the gold on this one. I don't want to mess too much, so I'm just going to smoosh things about a little bit so I've got a little bit more room. And I'm sorry if you can hear my washing machine, which sounds a bit like a jet engine at the moment. So I'm just going to dry these with a heat gun to make sure they're totally dry. Now I can see this is a little bit wet, so I'm going to try not to blow it everywhere. This might be a little bit loud, I'm sorry if it is. I did not know that about parrots, Dale. Dale knows awesome stuff. Thanks, Kirsten. These, when you look at them like this before they're cut out and before they've got any of the other bits of detail and stuff on, they look a bit kind of messy, but I think that's the beauty of these. So before I do the next bit where I kind of work on the details, I actually cut them out and add the black line. So you'll see almost immediately as I'm cutting it out the difference it makes, and it's why they're so awesome to do, because they are so forgiving. My kids can make these, and I think if you could find somewhere to hang them where they were bigger, and one of the things you could do is you could actually make them bigger deliberately and use them a bit like a bunting but made out of feathers. Just tie them together and you could kind of dangle them along a wall or around a picture frame, and you can see straight away that it looks neater and tidier than when it was on the paper. So I'm just cutting out those little triangles that I marked. Now this one's got 4. Do those, and then I'm going to show you how I do the dark line. If you have an ink pad and you have one of the blendy tools, you could try using that between here, or you could bend it. But I find the way I do it with a pencil the easiest for me. These obviously would adapt really well to mixed media. You could collage, you could use acrylics, you could use stencils. I mean, I love watercolours, and that's what I tend to default to, but I can see that there will be lots of fun in them. They're really fun to do with kids, because really the trickiest bit is doing this middle bit, and actually if you use a pen to do that, it makes it way more accessible for most kids to be able to do it like that. And the other way to do it would be to masking fluid the centre off for them, so it is completely white before they started. My kids are a bit older now, so my youngest is 12, he's just gone 12, and my oldest is 17, but they've done things like this when they were much younger, and it doesn't matter if they go over the lines, and you know, if they're good at cutting, they can cut it themselves. If not, you can cut it for them, or they can choose, is what mine used to do. If they wanted me to cut it, I would cut it. If they wanted to cut it, they would cut it. So again, going in with those triangles just here. Get those out. These aren't the greatest of scissors. I think they're IKEA's finest. I had this awesome pair of titanium scissors that cut all the way to the tip that I absolutely adored, and I don't know who, but somebody borrowed them in the house and bent the tip, and I was not happy, but they still work. So I'm going to clear my little bits away. There we go, just so they're not distracting. And you can see we've got our two feathers starting to look a bit more feather-like. Really lovely colours, I'm really liking that. And I'm going to use a 7B pencil, I think, if it's sharp enough. And any kind of soft pencil, charcoal would do it. You could even use a Stabilo All pencil, and you could use a little bit of water. The only thing is sometimes Stabilo All can like go everywhere and be a lot of black and be very intense, so I prefer to use one of these. Now it might look like it's a black crayon, it's not. It's they're called Mars Lumograph Black, and they're not shiny, and I really like them, but I really like them as well for doing videos. I need a little bit of paper. I've got a dirty bit. No, I'll use that one because that one's got a bit of a splodge on that side. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm taking the pencil right on the edge like that, and I'm going to do that all the way along and here, and that will give like a really fine kind of black line. Hi Wendy. They are easy, Nancy, honest, I wouldn't fib to you. I know they can be trickier, and you know it comes with practice, but I do think these are incredibly forgiving, and everybody at whatever level and experience they are can have a really good, enjoyable time playing with the paint. Now then, let's get that bit. I've made that a little bit dark there, but that is okay. I'm just trying to go right on the very edge so I don't get a super thick line, but sometimes you do. Then I'm going to go along, and this is lightly. I'm not pressing in, so you wouldn't be able to feel a line where my pencil was at all. Just a light bit, one side of that central stem bit, and it does have a proper name and I don't know it. If anybody's popped up and I haven't said hello to you, it's just because I'm glancing at the screen and really getting involved in the painting. This is, I think its posh name is a tortillon. It's a paper blending stump. You can use a cotton bud or a Q-tip. You can use your finger. You could use an eyeshadow applicator. And all it does is you kind of just smudge. So I'm just rubbing it just a little bit to smudge it. And you can see it starts to give that central stem a little bit of definition. It also means that if we weren't quite exact in our painting, we can cover it up just a little bit. Well, not cover it up. We can kind of disguise it a little bit, or we can know that actually this is fine. And I'm doing the same then along these edges. Now the blending stump picks up quite a bit of pencil, so I sometimes clean mine off. You can find though, like I did there, that it actually puts a little bit too much of the shading on. And the lovely thing about it being pencil is that you can go in and you can lightly just take a rubber. I've got this one, but you could do it with a big rubber. This is my ear rubber. You just rub just a little bit, and if there's anywhere where there's too much shading, it will just come off. So that's the second thing we need to do. Now at this stage, the pencil will come off on your fingers and you can smudge it, so you have to be a little bit careful. I'm going to do the same to this one over here. I think we're doing all right for time. Got about 15 minutes left. So I think we'll get them done in the hour. And I have done 2. Hi Carmelita, that was a present from my kids. I think it was a birthday or a Christmas. I think it was Christmas, and they went out with their dad to find me presents, and they got me an ear. It's actually a really good rubber as well, eraser. We call them rubbers in the UK. I know that may have a slightly different meaning around the rest of the world. So you see there I've got a little bit, that's quite a dark line of black. I feel like the blue can take a little bit more. It works better if you're working with the pencil onto the outside like that, rather than not turning it. So I've got a little bit of white there, so I'm just making sure where I'm putting this little bit of black going up, I'm defining that, the edge of that gold line, and I'm also filling in any little white gaps that I might have left. So now I'm ready to do the smudging again. It's an ear. I think it was possibly marketed as actually Van Gogh's ear in the packaging. It came in this cute little box, which has long since been lost and forgotten. So I'm just smudging up the centre of that stem again. And again, look, you can see, you can do it with your finger. You just have to remember to clean it afterwards. And it just adds a lovely little bit of depth to them and gives them that nice edge. I'm going to do it actually on the gold stem here, bit at the bottom, because it gives them a nice edge without it being really dominating, which I really like. I actually want to just add a little bit more in here and in here, because that's blended out quite a lot. I'm just gonna, again, I'm still gonna smudge it again, so it's just building up that. So if it's not dark enough, we go in, we build it for a little bit more, and then just make sure I've got along each edge. And often I'm actually pushing against the edge, so it's like, it's gone like that. That's the shading bit done, so I'll keep that. I will use the other side of this to do feathers, and then I'll just paint this side with acrylic. So next thing, I am going to grab out my Posca pen. Now this one was me being grateful for sunshine, and I could think about different things that I could draw on kind of sun motifs, and that's kind of what I'm going to do. Let's give that a good shake. Sometimes my Posca pens are a bit temperamental. There we go, that's better. And I'm just going to put dots, white dots around the outside of the circle, and then a dot in the middle. If it's not being white enough for me, I will switch to my bigger one, which tends to be a bit better. Yeah. You can see the difference there, can't you, in those two? And I'm just going to go around each of those like that. And you can invent whatever patterns you want to at this point. You can also not put those spots on that I did, so you've just got the watercolour background, and you can really go to town. If you're somebody who likes tangle patterns, you could add some tangle patterns to these. You could use the different segments to do things in. all kinds of loveliness. You could use stamps on them. I've got an experiment I want to try with stamps, and I actually found some stamps in the garage that I need to put away with my other stamps. But before I do, I'm going to try my experiment. I have this idea that if I use stamps and clear embossing, I might be able to get some fun watercolour effects on top, or even by layering. So I want to have a play with that. There we go, nearly done all the dots. I'm just going to pop a dot in that one, a dot in that one, a dot in that one. And then I want to do something down this centre stem, I think. I quite like the idea of putting hearts, but yeah, that's right, that's the way up I need to do it. So that when it dangles, I've got these little hearts, because I love sunny days. So again, when you're working on watercolours, your Posca pen can pick up some dirt. So having a little scrap to just give it a clean on is a good idea. If you have got workable fixative, you could spray it. Workable fixative, it's a bit hard to get in the UK, and I don't want to have to wait for it to dry at the moment. I like to just try it with ordinary fixative. So I've got those going down. Oh, I've got a little bit of something there. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I've got a mechanical 0.3, and this has got 2B lead in. And I'm just going to put some little diagonal lines in there, just going down, and I think just the one side. And that one's ready for me to attach it. It's a little bit of stringy feather too. I'm going to grab my other guys out and see if we can get a little bit of inspiration now for this blue one. So you can see I've got lots of circles. This one's got lines in, dots down the middle. Anything fun on your backs? Oh, you've got dots all over you, I quite like that. Okay. Okay. So I think I am going to grab my big white Posca pen, and I'm going to stick with that idea of dots. If it will give me white dots, I don't think it's going to. I'm going to grab Posca pens or Tombos. What do you reckon? Posca pens or Tombos? I'm going to show you. I've got some thread here, and I will show you how I do it. It's very non-technical, Carmelita. Very non-technical. I think I'm going to go for... I'll go for a little bit of I don't know. I'm feeling very indecisive today. Decisions are too hard. I'm going to shake the Posca pen again and see if it will play. Because I really want white, that's the problem. Let's see. Yeah, that will do. And I'll put some little white dots like that. And I'm going to need to bring those out, I think, with something darker. I think the problem is I'm feeling in quite a pencil-y mood, and I don't really want to use a pen. I think I will. I think we'll go with the Tombow because it's got kind of a felty. Ooh. My computer turned itself off for a moment. I'm not loving that yet. We'll see. I might love it in a minute when I've had another play. These are Ecoline pens. These are great fun. So I'm going to try and do a second line around each of those. It's got a finer tip. It's got a brush tip, and I quite like them. Yeah, I like them. They're fun. I feel like I want one there, and maybe a half one there, like that. And a little half one there, and maybe there. Yeah, that's working better now than more. And I'll go back in and see if I can have a bit more success with the white. I think maybe if we pop one here, that might be fun. Right, let's see. Now, I love Posca pens, but they don't always love me. sometimes they're super white and sometimes they're not. And what I've found recently is this stuff called Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. And it's better than white acrylic ink, which is what I was using before when I couldn't quite get the white that I wanted. Comes in a little jar and it is thick. This is it. Oh, it gets a bit crusty. You can see it's really thick. You can water it down, but it's really good for getting a good white. But I think we'll probably be okay. I am going to put some just dots of white now, just using the tip of my pen all over. And then I want to go in and add something, probably gold, to the middle of my big white circles. Go. Yeah, gold. I think the easiest gold I've got is probably going to be my Signo Uniball gold. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work beautifully. The white in this is really good as well. Mine's just run out, so I couldn't try that one. Again, you get the same thing. You kind of get a little bit of paint on the end, so you just roll it around a bit, clean it off, and then go back in. You could also give the white Posca pen a little bit of a blast with a heat gun. Yes, I like. I might put just some more gold on there, just some random dots, slightly bigger ones, just to bring that kind of warmer gold that I'm getting from the pen into some different places. And that, probably for me, is the kind of painty bit done. So, do you mean, so if I needed to do shading and I didn't have a blending stump, do you mean if you can't use pencil to do the shading, Nancy? Or you mean you can't use pressure? Okay, well then, there's a couple of things. One is you could go in with a Stabilo wall pencil, but just carefully, and when you go in, just have a really damp brush just like this and go along there like that so that you can pull it, yeah? And then if it's too much, have a tissue ready, and then if you press, you'll be able to take it off a little bit. That's one thing. The other thing is, I don't know if these ones are, because I've never tried it with the Mars Lumograph ones, but soft pencil, graphite, is water soluble, so it will move with water, so you might be able to do it, you know, if you've got a more scrubby kind of acrylic brush. I don't think I've got a scrubby brush out. Hang on, I'll switch over here, because that's where they are. That's not one. There's my little, oh yes, I love this brush. It's a great scrubby brush. If you can get it wet, just damp, and then sometimes, yeah, that doesn't do it as well as my other B pencils do. If you've got an ordinary graphite pencil, it will go with water. So you could try that with a Stabilo wall. You could also do it by, if you can do it with a mechanical pencil, just building it up and then just bringing it out, so you, a bit like you do ordinary shading. That could work. Another thing that you might be able to try would be a little bit of coloured pencil. Could you rub your finger on it? Because if you could rub your finger on it, you could try something like, this is a hard one, but that's too hard. You want like a soft charcoal? I've got like a brown pastel that I might be able to show you with. So if you do that, but if you can then just, that smudges. I don't know if that would be too much pressure still for your finger. But I'd try them out just on a scrap piece of paper and see what works well. I will have a play. I haven't got any of my, I don't think I've got a soft graphite pencil left anymore. What's that one? No. So I can't check to see if it will work. I've just got a HB, and I don't know if it will work very well with HB. It tends to work better with softer ones. We can see a little bit with the HB. Can you see how it will move? You can see I've taken that line away, and that's because graphite's water soluble. There are these really cool big crayons that are great for kids called Lyra, Lyra, and they're like just chunky crayons, but they're made of solid graphite, and you get them in 9B. Yeah, I think coloured pencil could work. Watercolour pencil might be good because they tend to be a bit less intense, so you could layer it up. I've got a green handy, so, and just layer it up close to it. Yeah, but yeah, that's a good idea, the coloured pencil. Yeah, Nancy, I'll have a ponder and I'll see what I can figure out, see if I can figure out anything better. Stabilo is probably the easiest. They do a graphite one, because I've got lots of the graphite ones lurking around, and I quite like those. So I've got this really cheap, it's really cheap, it's out of a pound shop, sparkly thread. So I basically cut a length of that, and I wrap it around and around here. Now you can cut 2 little notches if you want to make sure it holds, but I just wrap it round a lot of times, and then I tie a couple of knots, which takes me ages with this thread because it's thin and squiggly. There's one, and there's 2. Now I've got to paint the back of these, but I'm going to do them in gold acrylic, so I can show you how to tie this one on. And then once that bit's done, the 2 dangly bits, then I put them together and kind of wherever, however long I want it to dangle, I take the 2 ends and I just tie a knot to kind of make it make a loop. Oh, I totally lost my endy bits. I will try that again. You wouldn't believe I can actually do proper knots. All kinds of knots that slide and pull twigs and all kinds of things. There we go. So, and then I just cut those off. And that one is ready to dangle. I've just got to paint the back. The same with this one. Now, you could paint the back in watercolours, and I may paint the back in solid watercolours and put some just sparkly metallics on it, or you could paint them in gold acrylic. And like I said, if you want to, you can put 2 little tiny cuts, and you have to be careful. I don't, because sometimes I cut too far and I cut across the top of my feather, and then I get a bit cross with myself. But when you cut those 2 little nicks, where did it go? What happens is when you wrap it round, it kind of fastens in and pulls in real tight there. And so, there we go. And then just, honestly, if you're worried about it coming off, if you've got some super glue, once you've tied those 2 knots, just pop a little blob of super glue where you tied them. Oh, I've made my one end too long and my other end's really short. We shall just work with it, it will be fine. There we go, 1 knot, 2 knots, and then it's just, basically you put the 2 threads together, treat them as if they're one, and just tie a knot that gets both of them in. I've just got this one very, very short, so it's a little bit tricky. And I'm all butterfingers today with them, so I'll see if that's done it. I think it has, yeah. And then snip off my end bits. So if I wanted to finish those really, really quickly, I would grab out some of that iridescent bright gold fine, or whatever metallic acrylic you've got. I like fluid acrylics because it's thin and I get a really good coating, and I can literally do it with the yellow one on my scrappy bit of paper. I can literally basically put a little blob on. I don't even bother with a palette. Grab, I want a, oh, the kids have been in my brushes. There we go. You're a bit big. Moany. I'll just use this little one. And you just literally now I'm holding it still so that it can't move around, because otherwise I'll get gold on the underneath where it's going off onto the paper. And you can see just how quick you can just get the other side, and something sparkly on the other side is awesome. You can also, if you want to, rewrite then onto this gold paint what your gratitude was, because once you've got quite a collection of feathers, sometimes it's hard to remember which is for what, and if you really want to be able to remember afterwards, you can do that. But you can see that you get instant finished, and you do it like that, and it's really quick. So that's a nice quick way to do it, but you can just watercolour it again. I do not use my watercolour brush with acrylic, no. I reached into another pot over to my right, Nancy, that has my acrylic brushes, which I have these ones that I love, that I use, scrubby brushes that I use for when I'm scrubbing and when I'm using acrylics. But yeah, one of the reasons not to use them with your watercolour brushes is because once acrylic dries, it can stick to the bristles, so you have to make sure they get washed straight away and get all of the paint out and use soap, and it can damage your bristles. I mean, I won't lie, I have sometimes used like acrylics, but I wash my brushes like crazy afterwards. So that's that one all finished and ready to dangle. And then I could do the same with this one, and I probably will, but I am conscious that we are now past 8 o'clock. And I'm really loving this one. I think it looks really cheery and quite happy. And when I pop him on the tree with my other little guys, I think he's going to look kind of gorgeous. And so these are ones that you can just add to. And, you know, I think, like I said at the start, there are some times where feeling grateful is hard, and I am absolutely a proponent of being grateful for not having to feel grateful. But yeah, it looks kind of cool, doesn't it? I just noticed that, thinking, oh, that's pretty, I could do fun things with it. But yes, I don't know what I'll do with it. But yeah, you could have some fun playing around with that. You're right, Wendy. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope I managed to catch any questions that you had. If you have got any questions and you want to ask them now, I am happy to stay around for another 5 or 10 minutes if you can. I will pop this up as a replay. I probably won't edit it, to be completely honest with you, because I know there are going to be sounds like washing machines and dogs and things like that. So I think it's probably best just left as it is. I hope you enjoyed doing them. I hope you do them. I'm going to pop up a thread in the Mindful Watercolours group, so that if you want to share pictures, so we can all see them, if you stick them on that thread, we'll all be able to see those and, you know, enjoy each other's creations and feathers. I'm hoping to do another live next week. I'm not sure what it will be on. I'm kind of pondering doing something to do with creating my little crazy creatures, which are these kind of guys, which are made from splodges that I find in various places, and I can talk to you about where I started finding out about these and what it developed from. But this one was made from my husband's walking route, so that's possibly what we might do next week, but I'm open to suggestions and requests. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm really grateful for you coming along so I wasn't talking to myself, which is quite awesome, and for arting with me, because it's always nice to do art with company. If you've got any questions, pop them up. Yeah, I really do love creating creatures. Yeah, well, we can certainly do that next time. I can't necessarily show you everything, but I can show you the process and some of the things that I do. You are more than welcome, Jez. Thank you, Kirsten. You're welcome, Kay. Oh, thank you. You guys are awesome. I think that is it, unless anybody's got any questions or anything they want to ask. You're welcome. Okay. Right. No questions? You sure? There's nothing you need to know? No? I don't have any watercolour paints, or what do I do if I don't have something? Everybody cool? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming, and hopefully we will do some critters next week, and I'm thinking of doing just a paint along maybe on Thursday, where we can use one of the colouring pages that I've shared on the group for free, and I'll show you how to transfer it to a piece of watercolour paper, and we can have a paint together. Just, you know, have a paint, have a chat, and see how that goes. Yes, Kirsten, what do you need? Yeah, you absolutely could. They would work really well with anything that, like doing them the way I did these ones tonight, anything that will move with water. So acrylic inks, Indian inks would work. You probably, I don't think the wetting wet would work so well with fluid acrylics, but definitely inks would work. Things like if you wanted to do them using brush pens like these, I don't know if you've got anything like Ecoline brush pens or Inktense crayons, Tombow markers, all of those will move with water. You just have to play around with it a little bit. I mean, obviously with brush pens, if you've got a plastic palette, you could rub it off and then lift it off like paint if you wanted to, but they would really work with Inktense pencils if you put the colour on first and then just wet it and let it play, and then put the details on. So anything that's water based, that will move with the water. I'm trying to think of other things that you could use, and there are going to be ones that I miss. I mean, I don't know with Neocolor 2s how that would work, because although they react with the water, they don't seem to kind of move and play in the same kind of way that Inktense would, or inks. I mean, I know they work with acrylic inks because I've played around with doing them with acrylic inks and Indian inks and like drawing inks and stuff like that. So, and liquid watercolours would be great fun. So anything like that you could drip. Is that okay, Kirsten? Yeah, Dale's, I mean, you could definitely have a play with Inktense and Tombows. You could also, I mean, you could use the idea and make it work with acrylics. It would just look a little bit different, and you'd have to maybe work on kind of layering up and maybe use things like stencils or stamps that we talked about. So you could certainly adapt it if you want to do something different and get like acrylic backgrounds. And like I said at the start, you could always collage and do stenciling and make a beautiful background paper, and then draw that feather shape and then just add the centre stem in acrylics or pen and then add patterns to it. I hope that helps. Good question. Anyone else got any queries, anything that they don't have? Oh, Dale, that feels like a hug. And I love hugs. I'm quite a hugger. I'm going to be even more of a hugger soon, I think. Okay then, thank you guys for coming and sharing this with me. I would love it if you would tag me in wherever you create them. Either tag me in as Ray Creates or as Rachel Kentish. And when I do the thread, I will take some pictures and stick my pictures up in the group so that you can see what I've done, and also if you want some kind of inspiration or ideas to refer back to, they'll be there. Fantastic, Kirsten, that is really lovely to hear. Okay, you guys have really lovely evenings. I am going to run off now because I have promised my sister that I will do a pub quiz with her. Jelly plate would definitely work, Yvonne, to make a background, and then you just have to think about maybe putting the details on with things like fine liners or Posca pens and just really adapting the technique. You could absolutely use almost anything that you could then cut into the feather shape and add patterns on the top of would be perfect. They would be gorgeous with sewing. I can quite imagine having fun with that. Okay guys, I'm going to go off to the pub quiz. I hope I do better than last week. We weren't too bad, but we weren't at the top either. Have lovely evenings or mornings or days wherever you are in the world, and I will hopefully see you again for another live soon.